Myndplay started about 15 years ago with a simple vision. I was doing therapy at the time as an honorary therapist, and I was also a documentary filmmaker, also working in technology, so classic ADHD. And as a therapist, I wanted to find a way, because I saw that there was a lot of alternative therapy techniques. There are a lot of different types of therapy, everything from hypnotherapy to TFT to CBT, EMDR. The problem was it wasn't accessible to a lot of people. So I had a concept of, imagine if you could create videos which had teasers of a number of different therapy techniques and some way of measuring the effectiveness of those techniques. What you could do is then adapt the video in real time or the content in real time so that one piece of content can treat a lot of different conditions and pace the treatment based on how effective it was. So the concept of Myndplay was born, which was effectively a video player that changes in real time or adjusts the story in real time based on how you are responding to it. The problem was we needed the technology to measure the brainwave. The problem was also that EEG technology at that time was very cumbersome and very expensive. If you didn't have £10,000, £15,000, you couldn't get a license to any kind of a consumer EEG device. All the lab-based EEG stuff was far too sensitive to use in the real world, so it wasn't really all that effective. So we set about kind of creating a piece of hardware to complement the Myndplay platform, and our EEG headset, the kind of Mindband, was born, along with the concept of this interactive video platform. Sadly, what we found was that actually, although there's an incredible amount of talk of mental health all around the world, there's very, very little money. And no matter how many grants and stuff you go for, manufacturing is expensive, and an ambition like this required a lot of different therapists, a lot of contacts around the world. But what we realized is what we'd actually built, I guess, in essence, once we had the prototype, was a mind-controlled video player, which could tell an interactive story, it could change narratives based on human response. It didn't necessarily have to be therapy video. And once we put that out there, we started to get responses that weren't necessarily mental health, but allowed us to develop technology. So, for example, HSBC came to us as we were working with a lot of athletes with the technology and said, well, you use your video platform to make a round of golf that you play with your mind, you're benchmarked against professional golfers. So your outcome in the video is determined by how well you can match the golfer's mindset. We said, okay, yeah, that's very easy for us. It's an interactive video platform. All we do is, if you can hit this level of tension, this level of zone, this level of meditation, you'll get a hole in one. If not, you'll swing it into the water. But the point is to give you a real-time feedback loop. We then had an interesting request from the prison service. And they said, look, one of the judges came to me and said, look, we have a real problem with anger in the prisons, and young angry men, aggressive men, who think of anger as a benefit. Can we create a piece of content that will punish their anger? So we created a gangster movement, in which every time you respond with aggression when aggression is presented to you, your character on screen gets slapped about. He then gets punched, he then gets stabbed, and eventually gets shot. So the only way you get to keep your character alive is by training yourself to become less and less responsive to the content. And what they found was not only did they have the largest sign up for their meditation services after, but people realized that actually, in this case, aggression and anger were giving them a negative result, and therefore no more reinforcement of the kind of positive aspects of anger. And all of a sudden, we had all these young people who were joining meditation classes to train themselves to calm down. We also found that there was, luckily, an opportunity within the film industry, because if we can make interactive film, we can create interactive trailers, interactive storytelling, we can create content that can measure an individual's bias and change the narrative. We can look at how we even created a piece of content called Paranormal Minds, which was a horror movie which punishes you for getting scared. The more you feel fear, the scarier it gets. The way of negative reinforcement. So for us, what we then realized as we were doing all of this different content and gaming was that you didn't have to train your brain in the traditional way of neurofeedback. And you didn't even have to use all of these therapy techniques. When people were playing the games with their mind, using their mental focus, their mental calm, their zone, they were able to learn automatically through the reward cycle how to enhance their attention at demand, how to enhance their calmness at demand. And what we found is this is exactly the same training that our coaches were giving to athletes in order for them to be able to perform under pressure, under stress, under duress, under the kind of feeling of being antagonized and everything else. So we thought, well, instead of making therapy, why not just create neurofeedback gaming and content that allows people to become mentally stronger, mentally fitter, and therefore the impact of the other stuff becomes less significant. And what we found is that actually neurofeedback had a lot more benefits, and the research is getting even better. I mean, everything from addiction, pain, anxiety, stress disorders, performance enhancement, ADHD, autism. There are a number of benefits with brain training technologies. The only problem is most of them were very boring. Traditional neurofeedback relied on what I call the lines and the bings and the bongs. So you looked at the screen and you had to make the line go over a threshold, and as it went over a threshold, your brain learned, and eventually you learned to do it. The problem with that was what happened when you're not sitting in front of your screen and you're under real life pressure. Can you still replicate? And the thing is, you can, but it requires a lot longer training in order to do that. Because really, there are 3 stages of brain training that we feel. First one is consciousness. Recognizing you have the ability to train your brain and control certain faculties of your mind. Most people think attention is something that is drawn. It's not something that is drawn and also given. If you can actively control your attention, you can actively control your thoughts. You can actively turn off to avoid burnout and increase to improve efficiency. If you could train meditation, you have the ability to control the input, meaning and the external input, so things that are coming from the outside world, your stress states, and negative thoughts. So if you can train those 2, that was what we found was the closest thing to what an athlete might call a zone state or a flow state. So then the objective became, well, how do we make it more fun? How do you get people to engage? Because, most people, when you think of any kind of neurofeedback brain training, they think, well, if I haven't got nothing wrong with my mind, there's nothing to fix. Reality is, we've all got something wrong with our mind, and we've all got something to fix at every level. And even if it is the simplest element of when you take a child and you show them that they are not a slave to their attention, they can control their attention, it's like an instant change, instant effect. You go from becoming helpless to becoming active and to becoming somebody who recognizes that there is a level of control here. So after consciousness becomes control, training yourself to increase your attention, your meditation, getting yourself into a positive brain state, an ideal state for performance, being able to anchor it. And then the last stage is mastery. And in order to gain mastery, we must be able to test ourselves in a number of conditions. And that's where the Myndplay content came into play. The content is designed to create lots and lots of different stress-based environments or scenario-based situations, and then either punishing you or rewarding you for the right outcome, and thereby giving you a way of playing interactive games. We realized that we could enhance that by combining it with, for example, VR. So our headset, which is the Mindband, is a very simple single active sensor EEG headset. It comes with a kit, so it can go directly inside your Oculus headset and now give you immersive VR and immersive neurofeedback as a way to train meditation and focus in a more controlled, immersive environment. And as we know, the real power of video to evoke emotion is even greater when we can't escape. For me, the next stage after that, sorry, I'm just going to take a bit of water, if that's all right. I talk so fast, I'll give you guys a minute to process what I
I'll bring our colleagues from
Oh man, my mind's all over the
and I could just say, just very briefly, I was an early user of Paranormal Mind, and it was assessing my capability to be a what's the right word? Sorry?
Which one was that? Paranormal Mind.
Paranormal Mind, where you get rid of spirits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was only an amateur. I never got past the amateur stage.
He was only an amateur exorcist, yeah. So the next stage for me was, all right, we've created content, we've created a platform, but I really want other people to be able to develop upon it. And luckily for us, we were able to do a lot of contract work in between, a lot of commercial work. I don't think anyone in our industry survives without undertaking funding or moving into the commercial space. Luckily for us, the commercial space worked out really well. We ended up doing a ton of commercial projects, everything from making a happiness blanket for British Airways, which changes color in real time based on the happiness as a flyer, to creating personalized drinks for Tanqueray, where you smell different herbs and it creates a custom personalized cocktail, to deciding where you want to go on holiday for Expedia, to using Department of Travel for South Africa to create a personalized itinerary. So, things like attention training and brain training are one thing, but actually there's a real power of personalization once you can look inside the mind. For me, the final frontier was taking neurofeedback beyond what I was saying was the bings, the bongs, the lines, and then the auditory feedback into some form of sensation, experiential feedback. Imagine I could sit down and meditate and have a fan get stronger and weaker in real time. It's my meditation. So I know without having to stop, pure sensation alone, how relaxed I am. Maybe in my chair, a haptic feedback to tell me to relax or to stop working when I'm mentally burning out as a form of fatigue monitor. Or even having a lecture in your home while you're working, saying, oh, you're getting tired, take a 5-minute break, or your kids aren't focusing, that kind of thing. The whole point is to create a way of bringing neurofeedback into your home. And that's what led us to our newest product, which is the Mind Hub. Now, this little box here connects to the EEG headset. And now anything you plug into it becomes mind control. So we have, for example, a lightsaber, which allows you to train like a Jedi, where you can choose the level of focus required to turn the lightsaber on. When you hit that level of focus, the lightsaber will come on and stay on as long as you're above that threshold. If you want to get better, increase the threshold. Actual Jedi training for attention. But then, you can tie it into things like just plugging in a simple LED light. You can adjust it and set it up so that it will tell you when you're burning out. You can use it for training or for monitoring. And you can use it, for example, to plug in a fitness device. So one of the things we're doing with coaches is synchronizing mental fitness with physical fitness. So for example, with reaction training, where you've got one of these light reaction time walls, plug it through the Mind Hub. Now the lights only come on when you're above a certain level of meditation or focus. So you are now training yourself to be in the ideal state and still be able to train your physical faculty. So it's about really giving the tool to allow anyone to be able to create their own neurofeedback experience. Everything from, we're working with an amusement park to be able to create like a maze where you can open doors and lift bridges with your mind by being in the right state of mind, to being able to tie it into physical products, or allowing children to create their own circuits. One of the fun products we built off this is the meditation chair that treats you like a yogi. As you relax, you go up, and then as you lose your focus, you go down. And using that haptic feedback, you're able to train yourself and accelerate yourself to be able to learn to get into the positive state that you're required to get into much faster than if you were relying on traditional kind of meditation or stuff alone like that. But one of the other things, coming back to some of the other speakers now, is that we are very much an enabler. And it was interesting to hear you talk about alpha theta, because we've just worked with a clinical hypnotherapist to develop an app to train future hypnotherapists in how to recognize when their patients are in alpha theta. So instead of you trying to rely on your visual feedback to know whether they're in the ideal state to progress the hypnotherapy to the next stage, we have an alpha theta monitor that they're wearing, and it will effectively give you a signal as a therapist, now is the time to progress the hypnotherapy. So it's a way of kind of tying into existing and other techniques to enhance the experience both for the patient but also for the therapists themselves, as a way of accelerating the learning within hypnotherapy. And then some of the new research coming out, which is amazing, and we've been lucky enough to supply to almost 400 universities for research, a number of published papers mentioning our technology. So with the ADHD, I completely forgot what I was going to say. Thank you very much.
Rebecca just asking a question online. She's just asking if you've got any games. She thinks it's fantastic. Any games for the Oculus?
Yeah, so we've got a number of games inside the Oculus, and we've got a custom player inside the Oculus as well, where you can just use so it's like when you wear it, it's almost as though you're inside a mesh of your own brain, and then the colors are reflecting in real time your state of attention and meditation, so you can just use the environment as a way of doing neurofeedback. The reason I've got this is one of the most exciting applications of the Mind Hub is what comes from third party. So one of our friends who's been using our Myndplay tech for a while works a lot with stroke victims and people with a number of different neurodegenerative disorders, but specifically stroke victims who have lost the use of, for example, one of their hands. Now, this kind of a glove is an off-the-market product, costs about £70, and it allows you to press a button to open and close your hand, which is fantastic. But the thing is, could this be made better? So we found that actually just by directly plugging it into the Mind Hub, instead of you having to press a button, you can actually choose the level of concentration at which you want to open and close your hand. So you're using your brain to open and close your hand now. And one of the beautiful byproducts of that is that it accelerates the neurorehabilitation as well, just because of the synchronization of your thought to do it, active thought, and the reaction of your hand in real time. So simple off-the-shelf products like this can be given a completely new lease of life and enhanced massively using the Mind Hub, but without having to do any coding, any programming. The whole point of the Mind Hub is to make it plug and play for just about anything and to incorporate it into a number of different technologies. But I think things like this are what excite us, because we've had people who were able to use their hands for the first time with what they said was their mind, even though we don't have their attention. But it was a phenomenal feeling to be able to connect that physical sensation with the will to do it in your mind, something we take for granted pretty much every day.
I have a Mind Hub at home, I have to confess, and when I first went to see Tre, to see in its early stages, he set up the Mind Hub connected to a little fountain, so lights came on and water started flowing when you reach the right level of concentration. And I do have a video of myself controlling this fountain, so I can, it's not vaporware. This actually exists, and it does work. So Rebecca, next time maybe I see you and come over to you, I'll bring my Mind Hub with me, and you can have a play. Yeah. So Mary.
Thank you very much. This is great for two reasons. Number one, late last year, I fell ill.
Mm.
So afterwards, my whatever appointment, my doctor said I was overusing my adrenaline. Apparently, there's a name for it. And they asked me if I don't mind taking part in mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
So I said yes, because I'm always on the go. So maybe, that will work. Really nice, but they gave me 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So far, 45 minutes. Different programs. I haven't gone past 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah. But the 3 minutes and 20 that I'm doing, I can see, the benefit. So this is where, when I saw you actually brought that out before you spoke, I thought to myself, this might work. Now, for everything that you described will be really, really useful for the youth and young adults. But I'm thinking, when we think about their concentration span, how can you make it more fun for them so that they can, go through and actually have the full benefit?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, maybe with full demonstration we can grasp more, but it looks so intense to me that I think they may be put off at the beginning.
So I have a 9-year-old. I've got 3 others, but the 9-year-old is the most annoying one. The way I got him to get involved in the technologies, he used to love the scale X trick. So what I did is I plugged the scale X trick into the Mind Hub, and now he can only play it if he's above the required level of concentration. And what that taught him was actually I can really concentrate when I want to. But what it also did is it trained him to recognize what a high state of concentration looked like. So you're right, it's very difficult to get the kids to do it, but the whole point of the Mind Hub is to give them a number of different ways. So for example, another thing I did is my son's got a little remote control car and these little robots, really cheap, like 20 quid a little one, just to go forward, back, left and right. And what I do is I put a little remote receiver into a couple of wires into the controller. I can plug the controller into the back of the Mind Hub, and now he can steer with the controller, but he can only drive the car with his mind. So really simple little things like that to try and incorporate it into their life. And even sometimes just having a light on for them is fascinating, because remember, you're allowing them to be excited about the insights of their own mind. When I say to my son, how long can you keep this light on for? Suddenly it's a challenge. But to keep that light on, he has to be above a certain level. And, he'll start to get frustrated when he can't do it, come back a little while later, and then he's able to do it. So really it's about the incentive. And the other thing is not to overdo it. I think people think of something like this as, to me, 20 minutes is way too long anyway. We find even with athletes, we can do 5 to 10 minutes 2 times a week and get the same benefits. You just don't need to be doing it all that time, because you will fatigue. Your brain will get knackered.
I mean, I'm fascinated by this, and of course it is a brilliant tool for identifying people who, if you like, are, in your demo, hypnosuggestible, and amplifying their ability to get into a trance state. Yeah. One of the other fascinating things about hypnosis is obviously taking forward what people take on when they're unconscious or in an incredibly sick state. Yeah. Is seeding those suggestions. And actually I'm thinking about how one could, with audio suggestion, amplify the speed at which people can train. Because actually, when you look at the athletic potential, there was a wonderful set of experiments done by a psychologist in the Netherlands who was hypnotherapeutically training elite athletes.
Right.
And he showed them that actually their performance enhanced when they lay on the sofa and actually imagine themselves training. And actually, so the imagination side of things is these sorts of tools, given that they may be expensive for a wide array of the population, it could allow people to have those potential seeded, the anchors made for them to be able to utilize this in a learning facilitation, basically. And I think it's wonderful, because I think the way you've described it is obviously with a biofeedback, which is fun. But actually seeding on the back of that some audio suggestions may also be
absolutely, and knowing what state of mind they're in will definitely allow you to pick the perfect moments. And what you were saying about visualizations is actually fascinating, because we're doing a lot of work with racing drivers, and racing drivers are very unique in that if I asked any of you to kind of work out your journey, or sit here and imagine your journey from, say, a journey you make every day by car, and say, okay, try and tell me in here, you've just left your house, tell me when you got there. None of us can time it anywhere near exact. In fact, it's been massively accelerated. A racing driver who can get around a racing track in 1 minute 33 in his car can do the same 1 minute 33 in his head, which is phenomenal. And what you find is they go into an incredible state of gamma. There's the gamma frequency is linked to prana, it's linked to pleasure, but actually it's linked to that ability to get out of yourself and be somewhere completely different, to the point it's almost fascinating that you'll even see them cringe when they're going, or react when they're going around a particular corner that they will react to in the car. So their level of immersion is phenomenal.
You're talking about use cases here, which is fascinating. But at the end of the day, this is potentially beyond single use cases. You coming here, have you in mind any kind of what would good really look like for you to take this up another notch so it goes beyond single use cases?
I think the next stage for this technology is going to be the algorithm development. Actually, it's using AI to be able to get a wider range of emotions that can be understood. The thing is, the applications are many, and they are being applied in a number of different areas. One of the things you were mentioning about the cost as well. So it's about making it cost effective at the same time, and allowing the application side to be led by the application experts. So we don't, we started off as an application company and realized we are much better suited as enablers than we are application developers, because you're never going to get everything. It's like you said, you're going to pick a very small area. And what you'll find is, even though there's a huge overlap, people want to stay within their lane. So it's really hard to get people to multiply and be able to use it for multiple applications within that one area. So we almost learned over 15 years to stop ourselves from going too broad on the application scale, because immediately it turns people off, and then they think, well, it's clearly not a specialist item. And no, this is used clinically in so many of these settings, but it has the potential across the board. But it's almost now getting to the point where we're having to niche it further, just to be able to make enough of a dent. But for us, we're fortunate in that, because of our reputation over the last 14 years in the corporate space, we've won maybe 20, 30 awards for our clients. So it's allowed us to have our very unique positioning that allows us to keep doing this kind of development. But I feel very sorry for anyone else who kind of comes in with EEG, because it's a costly game, and actually it's still very far behind where it should be, given how far the technology has come. I mean,
you said that you were really excited by the hand thing, and I can see lots of different clinical applications within the neuroplasticity area and pre-priming motor cortex, prior to doing rehab, combining it with robotics, using VR as well. So I think in that neuro rehab space, I think it's got masses of different applications. Speech production for people in a semi-conscious state,
Absolutely.
and
And predicting who could be most susceptible to these sorts of interventions.
It's almost scary how broad it is. Like, we had this problem when we first started. We built an application for ADHD, very specific. We built an application for ALS. So people could use their blinks and attention to control a keyboard. And this was 12 years ago, before it kind of became more commonplace. But you're right, this is where we kind of wanted the technology to go, but we had to go through this really long-winded process to be able to get to this stage and be able to be, I guess, profitable and survive in the industry. Because, you know, as great as an NHS contract can be, sometimes it's not worth the freaking aircraft. Oh, 2 years for 60 grand, I didn't run that in my sleep. But yeah, that's one of the.
And your stroke patients, the number of people that have communication problems, speech problems, just being able to think and turn that into output would be phenomenal.
Yeah, so it's very exciting for the possibilities. Yeah.
I think it's very smart that you're going down a platform route, the way. So I think like, going down, like, connect, I don't know how you're, what technology you use, but it's something like Zigbee or something where you can start connecting with different devices. With the, so I know one of the problems there, the EEG is like their sensitivity or like determining, ultimately you're looking at like frequency of brainwave and looking at those different states. Because I follow this space quite closely about more from kind of brain-computer interface kind of stuff, which is kind of what we're verging on now. Is there, can you see EEG commercial grade, so not loads of electrodes, but just maybe a practical number, being able to get into higher levels of sensitivity? So you could, because it's kind of like, I mean, how many states do you reckon?
It's not so much sensitivity, it's the noise filtering, isn't it? The problem is it's almost oversensitive to technology, and in order for it to be effective, I think one of the best advancements has been electrode technology.
Which the research grade one will do brain activity in certain locations, which then we kind of map out, right?
That depends on how. So I had set the research grade, but we only focus on left prefrontal,
Right?
Because the more sensors you add, the more complicated it gets. The harder it is to maintain connectivity. I can't use dry sensors if I want to do anything overhead. So I don't want to have to shave everyone's head when and then the other problem is what are you going to do with that data? So one of the things about the prefrontal cortex is we have more algorithmic data from the prefrontal than a lot of other places, specifically related to emotion. So for example, attention, meditation, joy, anxiety, learning, creativity, familiarity, memory, problem solving, all of that occurs on the prefrontal cortex. So I don't necessarily need to go anywhere else, because if you're using a multi-channel system, you're using it because all you're really interested in is in activation, right? So you're looking just at the raw signal. I'm not so much interested in that. I'd rather focus on the algorithms that we've developed around it. Still got the raw data there, coming in at 512 hertz, but I'm more focused on the algorithmic data that allows me to determine a state that's most common for everybody, because then if I say to you, I want you to go and train your beta for 10 minutes, low beta. How do you do that? Whereas if I tell you I want to train you to concentrate, I want you to focus, something that we can relate to. So I think having the algorithms and specific states that are recognizable will definitely help the industry in overcoming some of those barriers. And I think,
do you reckon you can do like thoughts more rather than kind of states go into?
I think that anything around thoughts is well off, and I think that that's going to require more of the invasive type stuff, or much deeper. To me, actually, we're worried about thoughts, but we haven't even got close to controlling emotion yet. And I think that's one of the problems in the industry. Everyone's looking too bloody far ahead, and it's like, well, let's pass stage one. Like, if we can manage our attention and meditation, we can worry about the deeper frequencies and cognitive processing and cognitive enhancement. If you can't even control it when you're going to scream your lungs out or get pissed off at someone down the road or perform, or I can't perform today because I feel like shit, then you haven't gone over the first barrier of kind of human limitation. To me, Mankind 2.0 and the new generation is actually incredibly emotionally resilient and stable. And once they're emotionally resilient and stable, then you can look at other levels of enhancement. So let's tackle level one first.
On PhD, we work with some guys trying to do the optical brain interface stuff, which is like, you kind of like your heart rate through here, trying to do blood flow through the skull. And it was just like ridiculous. It was like maybe in like 30 years, this could be something that you might be able to turn light on.
Whereas now they're doing it in earbuds, which is also to me a load of crap, quite frankly, because if you're picking up EEG from inside the ear, you're picking up an absolutely generic nonsense level of EEG. What the hell does it relate to? Auditory cortex, cognitive processing, occipital. I'm looking at what I'm looking. You're just giving me an overarching blur. And that's what my frustration is a lot with that as well. And also with stimulation, like neurostimulation scares the daylights out of me. We're not at a point where we can control it, and yet we're looking to augment it and replace our own faculties with devices that we don't know if they're going to stop our brains from producing the natural abilities. That's kind of how the brain works. If you find me an alternative, and I will stop using your brain for that because I've got other shit to do. But yeah. So I got a little bit lax in my tongue at the end. We're at lunch now, so we're all right.
No change there then, Trey.